And then there's grades. Grades, as we're going to kind of talk about tonight, grades are a reporting system. It's a way to communicate home to parents, one way to communicate home to parents, guardians, grandparents, exactly what kind of progress we think we're seeing from students. As we'll look at tonight, they were created for that reason, to kind of look at communication of progress, rank and file of people, as we'll see from the history. It's one of many communicating systems home. Remember, our goal tonight is to really inform ourselves about standards-based grading, assessment, instructional practices, which doesn't mean the flip side of the coin is that grades then are always bad. We're going to look at the components that we believe have been effective for our students, while also looking at some of the different things that we have found in research about grades and grading practices. We know now that grades are mostly used commonly to communicate the average of assigned points and scores across the determined time period. A 3-week unit where students had 5, 6, 7 opportunities to earn points that go into a grade book. And the averaging then of those points, sometimes with weighting, sometimes not, is put together to determine sometimes a grade for that unit. Many school districts do so across a quarter. Students attend school, they go each day, they have multiple chances to be assessed. Many of those assessments are put into a grade book with points, which are averaged together, weighted or not, and grades are determined on a quarterly basis. Schools do it at semester basis and yearly basis. There are a lot of different ways to use it. One of the things we've worked really hard on here at St. Bridget's, which is also certainly a movement across this nation, is to differentiate for our students the type of assessment that they are seeing at any given time. Formative assessments and summative assessments are the two types that we look at across our school year to use to assess our students. The more commonly one is the summative assessment. That's the one where we're kind of looking at a snapshot in time. We'd like to look at evidence right now to determine how well have you learned and mastered the components that we have been teaching and you have been learning across this unit. That snapshot in time tells us where achievement is at any given moment that a summative assessment is used. The formative assessment, that's an assessment that's mostly used for the purpose of gathering information. We use them to try to inform the teaching and learning process. We use a formative assessment, usually for little if any points, so that students have an opportunity to show us what they know, to begin to practice and learn the skills that they need to have, but not to be penalized while they're learning and growing within those skills. A formative assessment allows a teacher on any given day to check the progress of students, to know what she or he would like to do or have students do to be able to continue making progress towards mastery when a summative assessment will be coming up in the future. The teachers in this building are becoming just expert at using formative and summative assessment, and it's really been exciting to see how formative assessments have really informed the practice of the teachers. And what really has been exciting to see as well is to talk with the students, to talk with your children and hear them say things like, well, you know, I didn't do very well on this part right now, but you know why? It was because they were asking me to identify the phases of the moon and I wasn't able to do these two parts of it. It's really exciting to hear them talk about the teaching and learning process and to know exactly what it is they know and to be able to articulate where they need to head next. Well, the history of grading is such that we know it began at Yale University back in the 1700s, and Yale and Harvard were the first to begin using grading scales because they wanted to and needed to rank students. So grades were created at that time to rank students during a time period, but they weren't used on a daily basis. In fact, students worked throughout a quarter, constantly knowing what is expected of me, how can I do what's expected to the very highest degree, and as they were doing those kinds of things, they were receiving feedback. And it wasn't until the end of the quarter, to the end of the reporting period, where then it was translated into some kind of a grade. So from the very beginning stages, at that level, grades and grading were not used to motivate students to want to work harder or to want to master a part of the curriculum in order to earn an A, because they had no idea what their rank, where their rank would fall. So all they knew was they needed to work really hard to understand what is expected of me, what exactly is the criteria I need to meet, and then put in the work and get the feedback to shape the process towards mastering the components of the expectation in the highest possible manner. We know that one did not work to get an A, but rather to show mastery, which is exactly what a standards-based environment allows students to do. We know that when grading practices move to the K-12 realm, that they have done so and now are used to show a wide variety of factors. Some of those factors are directly related to the intended learning, others are not. And so as we think about what exactly a grade represents, we think about all the core components that might go into the shaping of that grade. We know that in 1986 in this country, we began to move towards a standards-based approach here in the U.S. It started with a meeting of governors back in 1986, and they met with professionals from all work communities, business leaders, politicians, educators coming together to decide what exactly is it that a student needs to do when leaving high school to be prepared to either A, move into the workforce, or B, move into a college setting. So that began a movement of standards-based education which we use today. In fact, we know that currently in the area of English language arts and mathematics, we have developed a core curriculum, which is a national set of standards that 48 of the 50 states here in the U.S. will be a part of. And that movement, again, was begun by politicians, business leaders, and educators to try to figure out what exactly students need to be able to do and know to be successful post-high school. Let's think a little bit about traditional grading practices. When we talk about practices where students have traditionally earned A's, B's, C's, D's, where that is the reporting system that we use to show achievement, we know some things from research to be true. The first is, oftentimes, teachers consider factors other than achievement that goes into a grade, be it a grade on a unit test or assessment, for the quarter, for the school year. We know that grading can be highly subjective and can in fact be influenced more by the assessor, who attempts to translate mastery to a letter grade of A, B, C, D, or F. So we'll talk a little bit more of that and cite some of that research as we continue. We know that oftentimes grades are derived by the averaging together of work that students have done. And that averaging includes both items students have mastered, core parts of the curriculum students have mastered, and core parts of the curriculum they have not. And all of those components are averaged together for a score that gets reported out usually on a quarterly basis. We also know that oftentimes grades can reward students who are the quickest to pick up on a skill, or who are the quickest to identify a piece of knowledge and to be able to show back exactly what that student knows or can do, regardless of what kind of mastery or progress that student makes after initially showing that he or she knows something or he or she can do something. So we think about those components too. Okay, one thing we commonly try to have the teachers think about, and I know as I travel the nation, I love this part of workshops because we really get a lot of information about teachers' philosophies, about grading, philosophies, about education and teaching in general. And it's always really interesting to see what teachers will share about their philosophies. And I want us to think about these kinds of things tonight as well. How do different grading practices create or exaggerate achievement gaps among students? Now, we would think that as we're grading and working with students, we're trying to individually assess a student, help that student to make progress towards mastery of the learning, and provide specific feedback that will allow that student to do so. Oftentimes I use an analogy with our teachers who sometimes say, well, I have 25 students, and they're all wonderful, but sometimes I need to kind of move all 25 of them through the same way because we have a lot to cover and we have a lot of things we need to get to. And I always say to teachers, I never want to trivialize that that is certainly a concern. But when we go to the doctor, we would never allow a doctor to say, I've seen 25 people today, and basically when I kind of average together all of their kind of aches and pains, I think what you need to do is take this. We know that we would never allow other professionals to do the same. And it's exciting to see our teachers here at St. Bridget's to really individualize instruction and assessment for the students. So I kind of want to know what you think. And this is the part where I want you to kind of turn to somebody in your area and talk this through. I want you to look up here and think about what exactly do you think should be included in a quarterly analysis of a given student. So in other words, let's say we were working here today in a traditional system, and you were thinking about, what does a student have to do, in my opinion, to be able to earn an A in a class? What's he got to be able to show? What does she have to be able to do? Those kinds of things. That's what I'd like you to think about. So in a traditional grading system, what specifically do you believe should be considered when deciding on what grade a student has earned for the quarter? I'd like you, if you would, to turn to a person or two in your area, kind of share what your thoughts are and see what somebody else in your area thinks about that. We'll come back together in about 3 or 4 minutes. Go ahead.